Hello friends, today we will learn about fetal circulation. Okay, a very important topic to understand. Now, to understand fetal circulation, first of all, we have to learn about adult circulation. Then it will be a lot easier for us to understand the fetal circulation. So, let's begin with adult circulation. Suppose this is the adult heart. Okay, and these are the four chambers: the right atrium, the right ventricle, left atrium, and the left ventricle. Okay, and here lies the tricuspid valve and the mitral valve. Okay, the tricuspid valve and the mitral valve. Now here lies the superior vena cava and here the inferior vena cava. Both of them drains into the right atrium, as we all know. So this is the superior vena cava, this is the inferior vena cava, and the pulmonary artery gets originated from the right ventricle. Okay, let me erase this portion. So this is the pulmonary artery. Then the aorta gets originated from here, the left ventricle. So this is the aorta, and the pulmonary vein drains into the left atrium, the pulmonary vein. Okay, so this is more or less the schematic diagram of adult heart. Now let's understand further. So the deoxygenated blood from all over the body comes into the right atrium through the inferior and superior vena cava. The superior vena cava carries blood from the upper limb head neck portion, and inferior vena cava carries deoxygenated blood from the lower limb and the other organs. Okay, so now this deoxygenated blood travels through the tricuspid valve and reaches the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle the heart pumps it through the pulmonary artery, and the deoxygenated blood reaches the lungs. Okay, and as we all know, here in the lungs the blood gets oxygenated. And this blood travels through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. Okay, now from the left atrium the oxygenated blood goes into the left ventricle through the mitral valve, and from the left ventricle through the aorta the oxygenated blood gets delivered throughout the body. Okay, so through the aorta it gets delivered to the organs. And in the organs the blood get deoxygenated as the oxygen is consumed, and from all over the organs of the body the deoxygenated blood again return to the heart through the inferior and superior vena cava, and the cycle continues. So let's see it again. The deoxygenated blood comes into the right atrium through superior and inferior vena cava. Then the deoxygenated blood travels through the tricuspid valve and reaches the right ventricle, from where it travels through the pulmonary artery and reaches the lungs, and in the lungs it gets oxygenated, and this oxygenated blood then travels through the pulmonary vein and reaches the left atrium. From left atrium the blood again enters the left ventricle through the mitral valve, and then from the left ventricle the blood is pumped to the aorta, and through many branches it supplies all the organs of the body, and then the blood again gets deoxygenated, and which again return to the right atrium through inferior and superior vena cava, and the cycle continues. So this is the basics of normal adult circulation. Now we will learn about the fetal circulation. So what is the difference between the fetal and the adult circulation? There are three shunts which are not present in adult circulation. Shunt number 1, shunts in fetal circulation. Okay, what are the shunts? Shunt number 1, ductus venosus. Shunt number 2, foramen oval, and shunt number 3, ductus arteriosus. Okay, so ductus venosus, foramen oval, and ductus arteriosus. Now we will see each of these in details and how they are placed and how they work. Okay, fetal circulation. So by now we know that the source of oxygen in an adult heart is lungs. but the source of oxygen in fetuses is the placenta. So this is the difference number 1. In case of fetal circulation, the source of oxygen is the placenta, not the lungs. The lungs are non-functioning. Lungs in fetal circulation are non-functioning. They remain collapsed. Okay, so the oxygenation happens in the placenta. Let's again draw the same schematic diagram for the fetal circulation. This is the fetal heart and it's all 4 chambers. Okay, again the same thing. The superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, pulmonary artery, aorta, pulmonary vein, and the tricuspid valve and the mitral valve. Let me erase these portions. So the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, tricuspid valve, pulmonary artery, aorta, mitral valve, pulmonary vein, and this is the right atrium, the right ventricle, left atrium, and the left ventricle. Now, as we all know, the source of oxygenated blood is the placenta in case of a fetus. So the placenta contains 2 arteries and 1 vein, 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. Okay, now umbilical vein carries the oxygenated blood to the fetus and the 2 umbilical arteries bring the deoxygenated blood back into the placenta. So this is the umbilical vein which carries the oxygenated blood to the fetus, and these are the umbilical arteries which bring back the deoxygenated blood from the fetus. Now let's mark it: umbilical vein, umbilical arteries. This is the umbilical vein. Okay, this carries the blood to the fetus, and through the umbilical arteries the blood returns back into the placenta. This is the placenta. Now what happens? This umbilical vein carries the oxygenated blood from the placenta. Now during its course, the umbilical vein bypasses the hepatic circulation. This is the liver. The umbilical vein bypasses the hepatic circulation to preserve the oxygen concentration. Okay, this shunt is called ductus venosus, this portion which bypasses the hepatic circulation. Okay, now after bypassing the hepatic circulation, the umbilical vein joins the inferior vena cava in order to reach the right atrium. The umbilical vein joins the inferior vena cava and reaches the right atrium. Okay, reaches the right atrium. And deoxygenated blood from the upper limbs also reaches the right atrium through the superior vena cava. Now here comes the shunt number 2, the foramen oval, which is a opening between right and left atrium. Now the blood, a portion of blood travels through the foramen oval and reaches the left atrium. Okay, from there it again reaches the left ventricle. From the left ventricle the blood goes into the aorta. Okay, this is the aorta, and the remaining portion of the blood in the right atrium travels through the tricuspid valve and reaches the right ventricle and enters into the pulmonary artery. Okay, this is the pulmonary artery. And here comes the shunt number 3. The shunt number 3, ductus arteriosus, a shunt between pulmonary artery and the aorta. As the lungs are non-functioning in case of fetus, the lungs remain collapsed. Okay, and as the lungs remain collapsed, there is a very high resistant or very high pressure in the pulmonary artery. Okay, the pressure is much more here in comparison with aorta. So the remaining portion of blood which do not travel through the foramen oval reaches the pulmonary artery, and because of the pressure difference with the aorta, this blood again enter into the aorta through the ductus arteriosus. Okay, and from the aorta this blood supplies all the organs of the bodies and gets deoxygenated and now this deoxygenated blood reaches the placenta through umbilical arteries, and the blood again gets oxygenated in the placenta, and the oxygenated blood again travels to the umbilical vein, and the cycle continues. So the key difference with adult circulation is the ductus venosus, foramen ovale, and the ductus arteriosus, and the major organ or the only organ for oxygenation is the placenta, and lungs do not have any function to play in the fetal circulation. Now, what are the changes occurs after the birth of a baby? After the birth of a baby, the placental circulation gets off as we cut the umbilical artery and clip it. Okay. Now, as umbilical artery and veins are shut off, first of all, the ductus venosus will be obliterated, as there is no umbilical vein functioning, so there is no function of ductus venosus. It will close automatically. And after that, as the systemic pressure rises and the pulmonary pressure decreases due to entry of oxygen into the lungs, the pulmonary pressure decreases and the systemic pressure increases. The pressure difference here gets inverted and the ductus arteriosus gets closed. And same thing happens here in case of foramen ovale. The pressure in left atrium increases as the systemic resistance increases, and the pressure in the right atrium decreases. And due to inversion of this pressure, the foramen ovale also gets closed, and the fetal circulation converted into normal adult circulation. Okay, thank you.